I'm Julie Bogart from BraveWriter. BraveWriter is dedicated to helping parents and children become effective partners in the writing process. And what we want to talk about today is, what does it take to create a partnership with your child in writing? How many of you have struggled with what we call the blank page, blank stare syndrome? Your child gives you give your child a blank page, you get back a blank stare. How many of you have experienced that with your child? They seem to have so much to say when you're talking with them. You're making dinner and suddenly they come in bursting with information. But the second you hand them a pen, boom, Etch-a-Sketch brain. They lose everything they were thinking. Yes, yes, good. You all are raising your hands, high-fiving, and saying that you've experienced that. You're not alone. This is a common occurrence for children who are being asked to write. And let me explain to you why. When your child is capable of fluency in speech, which happens by age 5, they have not yet taught themselves how to use a pen. At the point that they add the pencil or the pen, their mechanics skills are not keeping pace with this erupting vocabulary and capacity to self-express in their native language. As a result, the handwriting lags behind the speech. So what you have is a mental logjam. Your child is saying a lot of words, but the ability to control the pen, to get the cursive R going the right direction, or the B or the D, and think about how to spell. Is it I before E or E after I? Or they're thinking about, do we need a period? Or why are these lines so small? The second their brain is engaged in the mechanics of writing, content goes out the window. They suddenly feel like they don't remember what to say. And they are not lying to you when they say that. A lot of times I get comments from parents who say, I know he's just being lazy. After all, he just told me all this great stuff. All he has to do is write it down. He just doesn't want to. So here's something I want you to think about. Let's take away the judgmental comments about our children. I don't believe in laziness. You've watched your kids repeatedly click a mouse over and over again to beat a level in some online game. Tedious work. They aren't lazy. They're willing to stay there doing the work. Why? Because they are getting some kind of satisfying result that they feel comfortable with. Writing is not like that. Writing is hard mental and physical work. So they quit or they dumb down their content to match their mechanics because they are tired. It's exhausting. So when you see a child run up against this logjam, your job as a parent is to support with love. Imagine, for instance, you are just learning a brand new skill. Let's say you're married to a computer whiz, a guy who's an IT, resource at his company, and you're just learning a brand new program on the computer, and you aren't comfortable yet with that program or the language around it. Can you continue to learn if your husband rolls his eyes and says you're just being lazy? Can you learn if somebody in your life shames and blames you for not putting forth a good effort? I can think of some mother-in-law relationships that would benefit from a little patience, a little understanding. That's what we want to offer our children. Think back to when your child was first learning to speak. And I like to share this example. I use it in my conferences. When Noah was 11 months old, that's my oldest son who is 28 now, he was sitting in a high chair behind me in the kitchen. I was busy washing some dishes. All of a sudden, he said, Nana. And, because I would be a future writing instructor and had a passion for writing, I turned around and I said to Noah, Noah, Nana is only part of a word. The real word is banana. It's a noun, and it goes in a sentence like this. I would like a banana. Because you are making a request of your mother, you need to use the oral format called etiquette. What I need you to say is, I would like a banana, please, mother. Okay, did I say that? Of course I did not say that. Nobody teaches a child to write by telling them what the oral format is or correcting their speech. The total opposite is what we do. What do? We say, oh my gosh, I have a genius child. He's 11 months old. He erupted in speech. I made an international call to my mother. I called Noah's father downstairs. We fed him 6 bananas and we wrote the whole event in his baby book, right? That's what we did. For the next 3 months, did we call bananas bananas? No, we called them nanas because, hello, genius child used this amazing word. Yes, we cheer loudly, we applaud, we're thrilled. Over that 3-month period, because we would use nana and banana interchangeably and his brain is exploding with linguistic growth, at some point he said, me want nana. Did we threaten him with not allowing him to speak again if he didn't get the format correct? No. Instead, we thought, oh my gosh, 3 words, they make sense. I know what he's saying. Again, brilliant child. Have to report this amazing fact to all of the relatives and friends. At about 2 years old, when he's constructing these different sentences, we might model some things to help him along. I might say to him, did you mean to say, I want a banana? And then guess what? He might copy me and he might say, I want a banana. But at that moment, did I suddenly doubt that those were his real words? He copied my words. This must not really be coming from him. I better be silent and never tell him what to say so I can be sure that any words that come out of his mouth are actually his. How many of you did that when you were teaching your child to speak? Anyone? Did anyone require the child to speak without any modeling or help or right? No, in fact, we go so far as to give them scripts. In the old days, when you had a house phone, we would have to teach our children how to answer the phone. And we taught them the weirdest stuff, like things we never did. I mean, when I answer the phone, it's like this, hello. When my child was taught to answer the phone, it was, hello, Noah speaking. This is the Bogart residence. How may I help you? Right? Isn't that what we did? We expected them to mimic us, to model after us, and we felt no guilt supplying them with exact text, with exact speeches. And once they got comfortable, once their fluency really kicked in, we were done with that. Suddenly they say things like, hey mom, get me a banana. And they shout it from the other room at age 5. And what do I say back at that point? What do you say? And now he knows that he can say please. Why? Because oral fluency is not the issue. And applying an oral format to his fluent speech is a piece of cake. We do not expect our children to perform the oral formats without fluency of speech. I'm going to say that again. We don't expect our children to perform oral formats for speech before they are fluent in speaking. Of course, they're going to make some grammatical mistakes along the way. That's normal. Adults make grammatical mistakes. I remember being in France when I was an exchange student in college, and I was talking with a French student, and she misused one of the common phrases that we had learned when we were in college and when I was first taking those classes. And I asked her about it, and she said, oh yeah, well, all French speakers make that mistake. I thought, why does a native speaker make a mistake? Well, hello, native speakers make mistakes all the time. My mom jokes with me that I still say, me and Johanna went to the store. I still do that. I teach writing because when you speak, you are going for communication. Accuracy is less important. But does that mean I'm not a fluent native speaker because I sometimes use a grammatical form that isn't used correctly? Of course not. I'm so fluent, I can totally get away with mistakes in grammar. That is part of the privilege of being a fluent speaker. So now, If we have a child who's 5 years old and is fluent in speech, do we put them in front of a boardroom and ask them to conduct a sales meeting for executives? No. Do we train them to lead board meetings in front of executives when they're 5 years old? No. Here's what we do with oral speech. We match the challenge to the level of maturity and fluency. So maybe for a 6-year-old, they might memorize a nursery rhyme and recite it at the kitchen table. They know how to introduce their cousin to their best friend at a birthday party. They learn how to read aloud looking at a book where it's comfortable for them to read and perform those words orally. We save things like oral reports for when they're a little older, maybe 8, 9, 10, 12. We teach them how to act, like acting on a stage, maybe when they hit late elementary, junior high, or high school. We don't expect them to do a PowerPoint presentation for an audience until high school or college. These are the formats of oral speech. And we do not worry that at age 5, we aren't somehow setting a trajectory for when they get to college. I share all this with you for this reason. We don't do this with writing. And so we screw it up completely. We start worrying about the 5-paragraph essay when our children are only 9 or 10. We think they have to know how to craft the perfect paragraph structure when they're only in 4th grade, or they'll never be able to do academic writing in high school. Not true. Your kids are already speaking in paragraphs. They just don't know where to put the indentation. There is already a natural flow, organization, and structure to what they write. All they need is some opportunity to see their own natural writing voices, to rearrange some of the words or sentences, to narrow the focus and expand the writing, to get practice with revision tactics. I did a scope, I think it was a month ago, called Wacky Revision Practices, where instead of using revision as an opportunity to bash our children for mistakes they make, we deliberately do violence to the original writing. We change all the sentences to lies. We cut them into strips and move them all around. We change the voice of the authorship. So they start to get comfortable with this idea that the draft is not the fixed, finished product, but that they are in a process of evaluation and continued revision. Does that make sense? So what we're talking about when we talk about writing in BraveWriter is protecting the writing voice and developing a partnership where we match the developmental stage of growth in the writer to the tasks we ask them to do. And then we create maximum space for kids to explore, take risks, revise, reconsider, and we offer pointers to support growth, but we don't criticize. We don't assume that they have to do something academic at age 7 or they'll never make it into high school. In fact, one of the things BraveWriter does differently than any other homeschool writing program I know about is we don't teach formats till high school. That doesn't mean they never do a writing product like a letter or a little mini book report or a lap book. They do those, but we save academic writing for high school. The mind is actually not capable of the rhetorical imagination needed until puberty. So all of this 5-paragraph essay stuff that they're trying to get kids to do in 5th grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade in the schools is pointless. All they're doing is they are ruining their writing voices. They become stiff, wooden formula writers. I can spot them at 10 paces. They imitate someone else's writing voice, and they never really get in touch with their own. What we're looking for in these early years of writing is the same thing we're looking for in speech. We want to know when we hear that kid bounding down the stairs, shouting, which child it is, and we know it by tone of voice, content of their language. We want the same thing in writing. I want to read your child's writing and see that child show up on the page. Does that make sense? Not looking for them to sound erudite at age 8. I want them to sound like the banging, clanging drums of an 8-year-old, because that writing voice is going away. When they're 8, they should sound like an 8-year-old. When they're 12, they should sound like a 12-year-old, and those voices will go away in favor of more eloquence and more sophistication as they become more comfortable with writing and more free to explore it in their own time, according to their own maturity. One of the things that I noticed when I was teaching at Xavier University in the fall, I'm an adjunct professor there, I had all these students who had been to private high schools, and I could spot, when I would read their papers, the ones who had only ever been taught formulas. They didn't have access to their own insight. They didn't even know how to generate insight. All they knew how to do was use transitions between paragraphs and sort of this wooden approach to slotting in a bunch of support for a point or an argument. What they needed, and what I tried to teach them, was how to gain access to the risky thinking necessary for good academic writing. So somebody asked me, so would you jot things down for them all the way through elementary school? Well, the truth is, you can do both. At the beginning, yes, you have to jot things down for your kids. But as they gain those mechanical skills, you can partner with them. They can write a little, you can write a little, you can support them when they get tired, you can start a sentence and let them finish it, you can take notes on their thoughts, give them the notes, and then let them refer back when they lose track of where they were while they painstakingly write it out. Don't expect a completed draft in one sitting for any project. Don't make them write more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Don't assign a project and expect a fully revised and edited product in the same day or even the same week. Take time. Invest deeply. One of the things I remember realizing when I was homeschooling my 5 kids is that so many writing programs had really crummy model paragraphs to go with their assignments. I was looking at them and it's like, I didn't even enjoy reading that paragraph. How in the world can that be a good model for my child? If you don't like the model paragraphs in your curriculum, don't use that curriculum. It means that they haven't actually understood that writing is for readers. Yes, even for teens. Teens can write longer than 5 to 10 minutes. Teens can write for a half hour or an hour. But what they need to get to that point is a lot of freedom and practice, free writing, exploration of the revision techniques, all of that kind of stuff. And it might take longer than if they simply had been doing this their whole lives. But that's what they see on standardized tests. Okay, so here's what's crazy. So what I started to say about these college kids, all the college professors hate format writing. They all hate it. It is the most common discussion topic whenever professors convene for training. So like I spent a week with my entire department and all we talked about was how to encourage the generation of insight, risky thinking, rhetorical imagination, because they're so sick of these formulaic essays that everybody turns in. And so one of the problems is that public school and private school, traditional school education, even dare I say some homeschooling writing programs, believe that the format is what lends elegance and sophistication to the writing. But they're wrong. It's risky thinking. And I have watched homeschooled kids go into college settings and knock it out of the park, even with grammar mistakes, even with some formatting errors, because the professors are so starved for good thinking. Accuracy is not nearly as critical as originality. We put so much emphasis on right spelling, right formatting, right crediting, and we are missing what writing actually is. Writing is a self erupting on a page. And if you, God forbid, chopped off both the hands of your children and gouged out all their eyes, they could still be writers, as long as someone can transcribe their words for them. No one needs to know how to do the mechanics to be a writer. The only reason we teach the mechanics of writing is so your kids don't have to pay a secretary for the rest of their lives. It's a shortcut between the brain and externalizing that thought. That's the only reason. So what we want to do is we want to put accuracy in its proper context. It's important, but it's not writing. I worked as a ghostwriter for a number of years before I started BraveWriter. My name is not on the cover of a single book I ghostwrote, because the thoughts came from the person I was ghostwriting for. And I was actually writing copy. I wasn't just editing their words, but it was their thoughts. It was their ideas. I was lending my skills. So think about that for a minute. If your kids are original, insightful, creative, and they have bad spelling, so what? So what? Is it worth bashing that original person because the spelling is incomplete, because they spell like an 11-year-old? They all spell lousy until they're about 18. Between 12 and 18 is when spelling really solidifies. Now, there are some kids who have unique issues, and if you're noticing sort of random spellings and you can't figure out why they are using the strategy they're using, because a lot of misspellings are homonyms. A lot of misspellings are just little habits or an attempt to apply a phonics rule and they do it incorrectly. Those are just kids who don't have enough experience with transcription yet. If your child is in a different category where every word is confusing and there's no consistency in their misspellings, go ahead and get someone to do the diagnostics testing to ensure that there isn't a problem like dyslexia. But for the vast majority of children and adults, it takes 10 years to gain spelling fluency. You start at about age 8, and by 18, most of your writing is accurate, with some help from spell check, thank God. Don't you love spell check? I mean, I still really don't know if there are 2 C's and 2 M's in accommodate or not, but I don't have to, because spell check tells me every time. And that's the reality of our world. It is not a moral failing to use spell check. It is smart writing. Bottom line, I have to have editors for everything I do. I produce all kinds of curriculum and products. I cannot edit my own work. I have to hire someone from the outside. Do you know I still get emails from parents who read the Arrow or the Boomerang and they write to me and say, you have the wrong last name in this product. Or, Julie, there's a typo on page 3. This is after drafting, a copy editor, the layout person, and a final reread. Is that really the difference between me being a competent writer and not? Do you get value out of the Arrow even if I accidentally use a homonym in the wrong way? Think about content. Content is king in writing. And as a result, I really don't like grammar police. I don't like this whole notion that somehow you have a smug superiority because you spotted a typo. When I wrote Faltering Ownership, we had, I think, 1,800 changes in that document. Typos, edits, and revisions. 1,800! And I found 2 immediately after publication and had to fix them. I don't think we really comprehend just how challenging it is to manage the mechanics while we are also working with original thought. Be gracious. Be generous. When you're on Facebook and someone misuses your, ask yourself this, did I understand the communication? And when you see it and you understood it and they made the mistake, be gracious. Just simply say, oh good, I understood. How awesome is that? The communication received. There's nothing better about knowing that it was the mistaken usage. Now, if you want to be taken seriously when you are published. You do need to have accurate mechanics. It's important for your essays in college, for your blog, for your products you sell, for the books you write. So triangle in someone to read your drafts and keep growing in your own writing. Yes, but someone says, oh man, but it hurts my eyes. Well, sure, occasionally those things hurt my eyes too, but they don't as much as they used to, and I'll tell you why. I decided I had been trained into that belief system by school. And really, bottom line is, I value human beings. I value all writing risks. I value the willingness to communicate your ideas with me, even when you don't have a great grasp of the mechanics. I value that. So that's why I treat that very gently. In email, I get emails every day from parents, and so many of them say, I was really nervous to email you because I didn't know if my grammar, spelling, or punctuation would be up to snuff. What a sad thought that you would be afraid to ask a question of a curriculum writer because you think you'll be judged. That is so not the world I live in. That is so not how I would ever treat anyone. But isn't that what we've been trained to believe about English teachers and people who are professional writers? Like it's some secret society that I know how to spell accommodate and you don't, or that I know how to use a semicolon and you don't. You can learn all that stuff. There are style guides, there are grammar reference books, you can hire a copy editor. So when you're working with your kids, please start by telling them you are brilliant, and all that amazingness that's trapped inside your brain, we're going to help get it out, and we'll clean up all the little mess of the mechanics as we do, but I'm so much more interested in what's going on inside of you. And you know how you show them that that's true? Here's a little tip for those who don't know it. You jot down what they say to you when they're excited about something. You don't ask them to narrate. You simply wait for that eruption of speech where they're so excited about beating a level in Halo, or the dog that chased the squirrel in the backyard, or how they're going to redecorate their bedroom. When they are interrupting you while you're in the shower, on the phone, driving, or making dinner, because it always happens at an inconvenient time, I want you to just grab a piece of paper immediately and a pen, and you just start jotting down what that child is saying. Your child will pause and say, Mom, what the heck are you doing? And you're going to say, oh my gosh, this was so good. I have to write it down. And you start writing it down. And then your child is going to say, oh, well, in that case, and she'll square her little shoulders and she'll tell you 3 times as much. Or your child might say, Mom, don't do that. That's weird. I'm trying to talk to you. Here's what you do. You put down the pen and paper. You say, all right. And then you become a digital recorder. You try to remember as close as you can their exact words. You stop what you're doing. You pull the car over. And when they're done, you write it down after they leave, as close to what you remember as possible. Now, here's the key. That night at dinner, I want you to pull out that piece of paper that you wrote it on and read it. This is why it's important that they see you writing it down, and then you're going to read it. You're going to say to your husband or the other kids or whoever your partner is, you're just going to say, Laura was telling me the cutest story about our dog chasing that squirrel in the backyard, and it was so good, and I was afraid I'd forget it, so I wrote it down. And I just want to read it to you. And then you pick it up, and you read her words to the family. Now, don't talk about it as though it's writing. Talk about the content. So after you've told this little story, everybody should be saying, well, then what happened? And, oh my gosh, did the squirrel look scared? And how fast do you think Rocky was running? Like that. You engage the content. When you do this, you will be shocked. When you go to writing, you need to do this consistently for a little while, not every day, but once a week, a couple times a month. When you go to writing after you've practiced this a little bit, suddenly your kid knows at the deepest level that what's inside is what you want on the page. They don't know that until you've jotted down their words and shared them with an interested audience. If you simply say, I don't care what you write, anything is good, whatever's inside, they don't believe you. Because up until now, they thought that you wanted perfect spelling and handwriting. They thought you wanted them to write about Pocahontas, not the way the dog chased the squirrel. So you have to demonstrate that you value their speech and that their speech is their writing, the voice that is authentic to them. Does that make sense? So this is the foundation of the writing life. When you then go to something like free writing, which is a practice that we use in BraveWriter all the time, now they know what you mean by the word free. You actually mean it. It's not a trick to get them to write. It's truth. They are free to write things like, I hate this, this is stupid, it's dumb. Free writing is the practice where you set a timer for 3 to 5 to 10 minutes, and everybody has a sheet of paper. They have their own sheet of paper and a pen, and they write whatever comes to mind until the timer dings. The only rule is you keep the pencil moving. That's the only rule. And there is no editing, no revising. It's okay if it's fragments. It can be anything. It can be, why is my mom making me do this? I really hate homeschool. This is so stupid. I wish I had a pink pen that smelled like perfume. They can write anything they want. Because until they hook up the brain with the hand, they're blocked writers. And all those thoughts about how much they hate writing, that's preventing them from writing about Pocahontas. That's why they're not writing about Pocahontas. Let it out. This is therapy. Therapy for the kids who hate writing. And as they get comfortable with this practice over time, they'll start writing about other stuff because they'll not be blocked anymore. But here's the key. Ready? You have to write too. This isn't do writing to your children. You have to sit at the table with your own pen, confront your own blank page, feel nervous and scared that they're going to see that you're a fraud and a terrible writer and should have no business teaching them how to write. You got to face it because that's what they're going through. And if you write with them and you light some candles and you have brownies when it's all over, the magical ad for all BraveWriter events, your kids will start to look forward to free writing. It won't be this stressful, horrible thing. All right, let's see what time it is. Who's keeping track of my time for me? Ha, ha, ha. We have 2 minutes left, and then I'm getting off. So I will take a couple of questions. I actually brought with me all kinds of my products, but we don't even have time. Can't physically do that. Well, sure. So if they can't free write yet, they can dictate to you and you can type while they're talking. You can also let them make a lot of misspellings. There's no requirement for correct spelling or punctuation or handwriting in a free write. Yep. Oh, have a fun poetry tea time. Yeah, this will be saved on Catch. So BraveWriter's primary curriculum is called The Writer's Jungle. I have it right here. And in the binder version, it's got tab dividers. It's kind of beautiful. Can you kind of see that? Writer's Jungle. It's $97 plus shipping and handling. You can also buy it digitally for $79. And this is the manual that instructs you about how to teach your kids to write. It's not just a set of exercises. It's actually helping reform that relationship between you and your kids. And it helps every age, 5 to 18. We do not have a Spanish version, but if you speak English, you don't need a Spanish version because the writing experience is the same across the board in any language. We, of course, will have copies for sale at the retreat. So for an 8th grader, I would sign up at BraveWriter's online classes. You could try Kids Write Intermediate. You could try middle school writing projects, things like that. Email me, julie@bravewriter.com, and I'll make some recommendations. How do you handle edits? So, great question. One of the greatest things to do with editing, don't be the first person to do it. Give back the piece of writing to your child. Hand them their own pencil or pen and take a few days after the writing is complete, and a few days later, hand it back to them, give them a pen and say, I'd like you to take your first pass at this. and then give them a checklist. Say, look for capital letters after all the periods. Make sure you like where your periods are, and make sure that you like all your spellings. And let them, well, you know, what's interesting is, I don't want you using a red pen, but some kids find it very empowering to use red pens themselves on their own writing, so let them decide, pencil or red pen. But let them take that first pass, because here's what happens. Once they are not doing original writing and are just reading, they're picking up their own mistakes. They will find their own mistakes. Just like I find my mistakes after I create something and go back and reread it. So don't be the person who edits your child's work before they've had a chance to edit it. And really, free writes don't need to be edited, but this is if you're at the end of that process. How do you handle multiple children? Well, you all free write at the same time. That's how I would do it. And if you need to jot down individual children, just rotate. You know, do one a week. If you have 5 kids, it'll take you 5 weeks to get 5 of them. Different ages will all naturally write at their own level. You can all be working on the same project, but everybody's just going to write at their own level. I had 5 kids. They were all different ages, and that's what we did. Oh, one of mine thinks he is a perfect writer and makes no mistakes. Well, lucky for him. So let's let him go on with that delusion. Why would we want to ruin that? It means he has a lot of confidence. I think I would just really roll with that. Really enthuse, really applaud him. I might even strew in the house some books about writing by professional writers. Maybe that would be fun for him. Assuming he likes writing. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? So I was going to show you really quick. I have a DVD series that teaches all of this information about writing in a lot more detail. You start the writing classes online at age 8, 9, 10 in there. We have one brand new class for 5 to 8-year-olds called Story Switcheroo, which is sort of an oral and writing combination class about fairy tales, and super fun for your early pre-writers. Free writing is, 5-year-olds too young for free writing. They should just be saying things to you and you're jotting them down. That's all you need to do with a 5-year-old. So anyway, this DVD set is wonderful if you are needing all my core teachings about writing in homeschool. And you can find out about it at BraveWriter.com/DVD. Yeah, well, so there is a family discount for Kids Write Basic. And then we have some classes that are family classes, one tuition for the whole family, and then some are individual student. It depends on the online class. Do you always go with their interest? Sure. I mean, if you have a child who is writing proficiently, then you can start to introduce subject areas for them to write about, but do it in collaboration. Don't assign it. Say, well, what if we, and if they love something like Star Wars, maybe see if you can apply a comparison between Star Wars and the Revolutionary War or something like that. What comes after their first pass of editing? Well, that we are at our limit, so I probably can't go into a big discussion about that, but everything you need to know is in here. So if you want to do that. Yeah, so do you start writing later if they're reluctant or late readers? You have to, right? Because if they're not fluent readers, it's very challenging to write out words. But you can start jotting down their words. My youngest did not read until she was nearly 10. And of course, we recorded all kinds of stuff for her in writing. Yes, kids 14 down to 9 can all benefit from Kids Write Basic. I often recommend starting there because it will sort of change the whole dynamic of the family. If you and all your kids together reboot through Kids Write Basic, which is our main class. We have some sessions starting on Monday. Our winter session is winding down, and spring registration is going to be March 7th for the spring classes. You can learn more about BraveWriter at BraveWriter.com and scroll down to the online classes and just click there. So thank you, everybody. We are going to do a second scope. And it is all about, the classes are online. They're asynchronous. Anybody can do it. Yep. Anyway, at 2, I'm going to talk about making money and being a homeschooler at the same time. I'll be more than happy. One high school class equals a quarter credit. Our classes are short. They're only 3 to 6 weeks in length. And there's a whole psychology around why we do it that way. I will happily do a scope on our online classes. Maybe we can do that on Monday. That would be really fun. Great having you all. Thanks for hopping on. It was kind of an unplanned scope, but I was basing it off of all the emails I've been getting lately. And there's been a lot of interest in understanding how BraveWriter sees writing. And I wanted to make sure, especially those of you who are new, had that foundation as we go forward in our scoping together. I missed you too, Alicia. I'm so glad you'll be there at 2. All right, everybody, I'm going to go and I will see you in just about an hour and 10 minutes. All right, everyone. Live honestly, write bravely. I'm Julie Bogart from BraveWriter. Thanks for joining me.